Welcome, Elena. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to be talking success tips for highly sensitive people.
Thank you so much, Bernadette, for having me. I'm thrilled that we get to have this chat today.
And for people that are watching, Elena and I just recently connected via this kind of awesome series of synchronistic events where someone introduced me to someone else who happens to be your best friend, who said, I think you guys should talk. And here we are having this conversation to bring your wisdom and your successful background to share with people in our community that are either highly sensitive people themselves, or maybe don't even realize they're what we might call HSP for short, a highly sensitive person. And you've got a really fascinating background, being very successful in multiple types of businesses, a very successful TED Talk presenter on the topic of HSP, which I will make sure is linked with this video actually, because it's a wonderful session. So do you want to maybe hit us right out of the gate with what your main message is to HSPs who are navigating this sometimes quite challenging world?
Yes, my main message to you, my people, my fellow sensitives, is that we are needed in this world, and that right now more than ever, we need to step up and step out of our safety caves, because the gifts that we have are the gifts that can transform the world. And we're living in a pretty chaotic place right now. And the best way I think we can counteract some of that is to bring the wisdom, the joy, the love, the creativity, the intuitive guidance from sensitive people to the table. So it's my call to action is to make yourself seen and step out.
Okay, and all the HSPs that are not doing that are currently having the cringing feeling of, I don't want to do that, Elena, and you know why I don't want to do that. So before we go into all of that, do you want to describe some of the traits of HSPs? You've just touched on some of them, so that if someone's listening and they're like, well, I feel kind of sensitive in this world, am I an HSP? What does it really mean to be a highly sensitive person?
Yes. So what it means to be a highly sensitive person is, of course, a multi-layered question. But Elena Herdieckerhoff, who wrote the book, The Highly Sensitive Person, she used the acronym DOES to kind of categorize the key traits of highly sensitive people. And I can maybe briefly run through those different traits, just so maybe if you're listening here and think, oh, maybe I could be highly sensitive, you might recognize yourself in several of these. So the first one, D, stands for depth of processing. So that means it's basically, are you the kind of person who takes everything to heart, who takes a long time to mull things over, or you had a conversation with a coworker 3 days ago and it's still going in your head about what you could have said, what you should have said? That's depth of processing, basically. So when everything kind of stays with you and you're on constant churn mode with the outside world, and that actually directly leads into the next one, which is the O, which stands for overwhelm/overstimulation. So because we take in any form of stimuli from our outside world and it kind of stays with us for a while, what can easily happen is that we slip into overwhelm/overstimulation, so that it can just be too much, and this feeling of, this outside world is too much, it's too loud, it's too bright, I have too much information, too many things going on, and that can cause this sensation of, I need to check out, I need to live in a cave, I need to shut off the internet. That kind of feeling you get from a nervous system that is just very easily triggered from the outside world. And you have often, even if you're not an introvert, the need to pull back from the world to kind of settle your systems and unplug. So that's the O part.
No, so that's interesting. So highly sensitive person is not introvert. You can have HSP extrovert, HSP introvert.
That's absolutely correct. And many assume falsely that they must be introverted because they need a lot of time alone. But that is incorrect. You can be an extrovert or an introvert HSP. And really, it's more that the time we need for ourselves has to do with how easily our nervous system gets stimulated and overstimulated. So that's why we sometimes feel the need to have a people-free day or to kind of say, I need to be in nature, or I need to just listen to beautiful music and tune out everyone and everything else. So that just comes across as being introverted, but it can just be, for a sensitive person who's maybe extroverted, a way to kind of let go of all that kind of stressful energy.
Got it. Okay, so there's depth of processing, overwhelm, overstimulation.
Yes. So, and then the E stands for empathy. And so this will be very familiar to anyone who is an HSP, is you feel everything. You're really in an energy osmosis with the world around you, and you can feel what other people feel. You're also the type of person, you can walk into a room, and if somebody maybe had a fight in that room 3 hours ago, you'll walk into the room and be like, energy here is off. You know, it's like when you when you can feel things in the subtle realm, when you can intuit somebody else's feelings. Maybe you have somebody that says, oh, hey, I'm great, and you're like, no, you're not. I can feel that's not true. So it's like we have this inner barometer where we can kind of take on the outside world and process it through the lens of empathy and feel truth. It's like we all swallowed a truth serum when we came onto this planet, and we can sense the truth. We can feel what other people feel. We can, of course, also extend a lot of compassion to those that are in pain or suffering. So we really don't have very solid boundaries by nature. Like our factory setting doesn't have a lot of boundaries.
What's interesting about that is that you're kind of like truth barometers, or rate, you know, like you pick up on it. Now that can be fantastic, but also it can be painful to constantly see and experience and feel the truth of this world.
Yes.
Whereas if you're not picking up on that, you're in your happy bubble. Because you're just walking around and seeing the surface of what's going on, whereas a sensitive person is like, I know that's not what's going on. I can literally feel it. So that's interesting. A gift, but also gifts come with challenges and downsides sometimes.
They sure do. Yeah, that can easily turn into a shadow side for sure. And it can also be quite exhausting.
Yeah, for sure, which is why that time alone is important. Not because you're an introvert, but because you need to process, right?
Correct. And that also, we still have one more also in that. We have the S, which stands for the sensory processing sensitivity, or our ability to process very subtle stimuli, right? So it's really this S is this awareness of subtleties, if you like. We have the ability to tune into very minute things and notice them. So we would be the kind of person, going back to our living room example, if the picture frame over the sofa is slightly off in its positioning, we'd be like, oh my God, like for us, it would be glaring. Somebody else would barely see it. Or, you know, we could hear somebody who left the tap on in the room next door. We can hear it and nobody else would hear it. Or favorite example of mine, I was in a hotel a few years ago, and I'd asked for a non-smoking room. And I walked in there, I said, somebody smoked there. And they said, no, that's impossible. This is a non-smoker's room. I said, well, I can still smell it. And they said, well, the last guest was here like over a week ago. That's impossible. And I said, no, I smell it. And then later on, I found hidden a little ashtray that still had the cigarette stump in there. And I'm like, what can I say? I can just, you know. So it's basically all of our senses are on high alert. We might see sights more brightly, or the lights can be brighter for us. We can smell things more intensely. Our skin is more reactive, and we can feel things more. Our taste buds can also be more refined. So it's really kind of everything in Technicolor.
Yeah, it really reminds me of someone I know who, when they were little, would always be very sensitive to like the feeling of the
materials. Oh yeah, and like it shouldn't be scratchy and stuff.
Yeah, it's scratchy.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, really interesting.
I was one of those kids. My mom always said, "Oh my God," and I said, "Mom, it's scratchy.
I can tell you stories of gorgeous little ones saying things like that. It's just making me remember fondly many conversations. Okay, so those are great descriptors that I'm sure people will be listening and thinking, okay, that is me. What are some ways that then highly sensitive people walking around in this world, what are some of the common challenges given the world we live in, which is wonderful and colourful and loud and bright and challenging and difficult all at the same time? What are the common things that HSPs get stuck with in terms of being able to move forward in their life, in the sense of being your full true self in the world, feeling good and doing all the things that you want to do to have a happy life? What are some of the things that you'd come up against that you're noticing? Because you coach people, so you're deal with what they're experiencing.
I think a big one is actually often lack of confidence, which starts very early on, because if you are born highly sensitive, you will have heard pretty much from year one, you're too sensitive. The message that something is wrong with you gets encoded in your brain nonstop, and it never finishes, because for most people, they don't understand. Like, they think you're being difficult if you say, oh, the room is too cold. Like, for you, it might feel like 10 degrees colder than for another person, because you maybe your skin is more responsive to that, and you feel things more intensely. And so people will call you things like you're being difficult, there's something wrong with you, you should be less sensitive, as if it were something that you could switch off, but it's a genetic trait, so it's not like you can turn it off. So it's this constant feeling that something is wrong with you, that you're an outsider, you're not like other people, and that, especially when you're young and very impressionable, that's a heavy message to receive from the outside world. And even the most loving parents, and I was very lucky because I had extremely loving parents, but even so, you end up in school, you have teachers, they have the other kids, these comments will reach you sooner or later. And I think even once we're now adults, we still feel this not good enoughness, and that makes us lack confidence, and sometimes it gives us this tendency to want to hide away from the world. And this is why my first message was, we need to go out of hiding back into the world, because we're needed in the world. But this kind of pulling back as a safety mechanism to not be attacked or not be questioned, we have a strong safety mechanism. So a lot of HSPs end up in a cocoon of their own making. And of course, that's not where we thrive as humans. We thrive by sharing our gifts. We thrive in community. So it's really about moving out of that safety shell again.
And I imagine, tell me if I'm wrong, when you are receiving that kind of messaging and then you kind of get conditioned that way, that I shouldn't be this way, I'm sensitive, there's something wrong with me, or I'm different from other people. Is it possible also then we create a narrative, I'm not made for this world, like this world is not made for me. I'm not
yes. I
might as well just give up now.
You are absolutely correct. And many do say that. They just say, you know what, it's kind of like somebody up there made a mistake sending me to this planet. Like, what? Why did I end up here? The world is too tough for me. The world is too rough. People's energies are unpleasant here. Why am I here? And this is kind of the dark night of the soul that probably most HSPs will go through at some point, is this, why am I here?
Yes. And also, let's talk about success, because you are a highly sensitive person and you're a highly successful person. So this is very inspiring for HSPs who want to achieve something in their career or their business, vocation, or any kind of project or anything, right? Lifestyle or otherwise. So let's call it for what it is. The world has a model for achieving success, what I call the old world model. Competitive, dog eat dog, every man for himself, the loudest, most dominant, whatever is going to kind of rise to the top. That old model really was dominant and really had its time. And it certainly doesn't work anymore. And I think it's definitely a dying paradigm, and thank God the new world is emerging. But what are the success tips for not just the everyday person to succeed in this kind of transitioning world to a new model, but for HSPs specifically? What can you share with them that helps them to say, well, okay, Elena, I'm willing to come out of my cave?
Yay! Yeah. It's true that the reason why most HSPs actually they start in a corporate career and very often migrate to the world of entrepreneurship is the following, because most HSPs are quite aware that they have gifts and that they have a very collaborative spirit. They're very creative. They want everybody to win. Usually, I work with so many HSPs. I think they're the most lovely, good-hearted people on the planet. They're not the steel elbow kind that says, here I come, and everybody else, please clear the way. So we already are built with this new model of success, whether it's in corporate or in entrepreneurship. Now, if we are highly sensitive, usually that approach doesn't work so well in the way of the world that is still stuck, as you said, in that old model, because you get overlooked if you are too kind, if you don't put yourself out there, if you don't communicate your wins, if you don't kind of also promote yourself and share what's great about you, or why you deserve that new job, or why you, when you pitch to a client as an entrepreneur, they should hire you. It's really about finding a healthy sense of self to share with the world, not in a competitive way, but really in the owning of your gifts and in the owning of who you are. And so really, I always think of this ancient Greek aphorism, know thyself. So what we all need to do as highly sensitive people when we're looking to really start a success journey, whether that's in corporate or in entrepreneurship, is truly know thyself. And by that, I mean, know thyself, know thy strength and thy weaknesses, because as an HSP, you need to tailor a life that suits you, because you cannot just slot yourself into the regular way people might succeed in life, because that hurts our energy, our sensitivity. We get burnt out, we get tired, we get resentful. We really need to figure out, what do I value? Who am I? What do I need in terms of personal comfort to do my best? How can I design a life around my truth, myself, my preferences? So just to give you an example of what that can look like and what that means, like, so I chose an entrepreneurial path. And that means, first of all, I had to figure out what is great about me that maybe other people don't have this asset or don't have this unique mix of skills, the secret sauce. And so I was like, okay, I have quite an analytical mind, yet I'm also deeply empathic and I'm very intuitive. And then I realized over time also that I have claircognizance. And so I was like, ooh, I can pull something together here. So I kind of married things that are unusual in the business world and pulled them together. And I loved always doing business, being involved with business. So I kind of ended up merging my business experience, strategic side, analytical side, with this very soft skill / spiritual side. And I even do things like reading cards, which, some people think, how can you be a serious business coach and read cards? Well, you know what I mean? But it's you can pull your skills and your gifts together and create a unique package of value that just represents you and that you then can share with the world. So that's kind of the one side. The other side is identify what you're not great at and or what really brings your energy down, because we're so sensitive to energy. We can easily understand what lights us up and what brings us down, and our body will tell us. I always say your body can tell you if something is right for you. So for example, if I see that I should do bookkeeping, you can bet your bottom dollar that my energy will tank because I dislike it. I get a rash when I open an Excel sheet. It's not for me. So what do I do with that information? Do I try to push through, teach myself how to do it? No, I hire people to do it for me because I realize my energy doesn't thrive with this at all. So I will look for somebody to take that part away from me. And that's what I mean with you design your life around you. Another thing is more on a very personal level is, what do you want your day to look like? So I know I'm not a morning person. I will never be a morning person. I am the absolute perfect owl. And so what that means is actually, even though I live here in Europe, 90% of the time I work with the US, because actually those times work better for me. And I'm not available for any call or anything before midday. Now, again, people would say, how can you be a successful entrepreneur and start at midday? Well, because that's how I know I can optimize my energy flow, and I'm more performant in the hours I do work than if I would stick to the 9 to 5. So it's that kind of tailoring that I mean.
I love that. As soon as you said you need to find your way of, everyone could just rewind and listen to it, because there was a little snippet of just, it was completely genius about find your way of structuring what you do and how you do it in the way that works for you. Because if you try to fit yourself into the model of the world,
it doesn't work.
And I've seen so many people do that, whether they're HSP or otherwise, and it doesn't work. It goes directly against the grain of your energy, your natural flow, your natural needs, your creativity. And I think generally, as a rule of thumb for everyone, the moment when you wake up in life and you say, oh, I need to give myself permission to live, work, operate, do, be exactly as it works for me, and like unapologetically, is the moment you're free.
Correct.
And when you're free, then your genius comes out. Right, but we just have spent so long smacking our heads against the wall to go, well, I have to do it because this is what they say I should do, and you can't live in this world unless you do it that way. It's suffocating to the soul, to the spirit, to do that. And just as a little example of something awesome, when you're talking about know what works for you in the structure of your day and things, I once asked to have a connection with somebody who was an HSP, and I sent forth like a meeting invite, and it was just so wonderful. I kind of applauded at the other end of the email. I got an email back and said, thank you, it doesn't work for me to meet people, but I'm happy to converse like a meeting over email back and forth. It just didn't work for them to be engaged. The amount of energy for them to engage in a conversation and a meeting structure with a complete stranger about something just didn't work for them. And I was like, oh, I just love this person for their awesome boundaries and their permission. Say, if you want to be in my zone, person, this is how it needs to be.
Yes. And if you had said, let's have this chat at 8 a.m., I would have lovingly, but very firmly said no.
And you know what? I'm the direct opposite. I am like I can operate while the sun's up. As soon as the sun goes down, my whole beingness switches into my pajamas, people. And if that happens to be at 5 o'clock in winter, that is what's happening.
Yes, correct. I get that. I'm literally the opposite of that, but I totally get it. That's why it's so important that there's not a one size fits all approach. You really need to kind of tinker and figure out, like, who are you? What works for you? What feels right?
Yeah. So when these HSPs are ready to come out of the cave, because there's many people that are in their own business or in their own career, they're already out there, they're out of the cave, but there are people that are in the cave and have got like a great entrepreneurial idea or startup business that they want to do. They're hearing you say, okay, well, structure things to work for you, package your gifts. What about when you're out there in the world and it's harsh doing business, and it's harsh whether you're selling something in your own business or you're operating in your own career, and you're dealing with the intensity of people, criticism, feedback, all the marketing things you have to do in your own business, whatever it is. What advice have you got for people to deal with the moments of my confidence? I'm trying to build my confidence, and yet I'm dealing with things that constantly feel like they knock my confidence.
I completely get that. And I think the best way to go about building a business is not to think that you have to go it alone or that you should go it alone, because a lot of the time we need a team. We need people who can support us, and people also who can protect us. What I mean by that is the following. You have people say you're very sensitive to criticisms from the outside world, which most sensitive people are. Imagine you had an assistant that maybe even if you just hired her for an hour a day to go through your inbox, you would have somebody filter your inbox for you so that you can maintain your high vibe energy, and she can filter out and take care of things that need to be taken care of without it affecting you and your energy flow. So it's about, again, know what could hurt you, know what could drain you, and put systems or people in place so that it doesn't get to you.
Well, see here immediately, this is because I don't think I'm HSP, but I am, the older I get, the more I've like taken off my armor, the more sensitive I feel. But I can hear in my mind saying that the old me would have said, but isn't that just hiding from the reality? Shouldn't I just face it and like learn how to deal with it? Mm-hmm. But I think you do get to, I don't know if it's a certain point or a certain age where you go, stuff that, I'm just going to craft my world to work for me.
I think really, you know, I think there's a lot to be said for owning the fact that you deserve a life that feels good. And you do what you do to feel good. And I don't know where it says that we have to suffer to be alive. There's already enough suffering, especially for sensitive people. We don't need to add suffering to our plate when we can avoid it.
Amen to all of that.
Yeah.
And, you know, in the first few years of my business, I started doing the coaching, healing, and all this kind of work in 2010. And in the first, I would say probably 5 years, this is 5 years of pain, I would just suffer through thinking that if I was out there in the world being an entrepreneur, then I put myself outside of the cave and I just have to take what people give me. Like if I have to, like if someone wants to come into my zone and they like, I'm in the world, so therefore if people want to throw stuff at me, I just have to take it. And then I decided one day, stuff this. And I have basically, I say this to clients who are going to go in the online world and they're nervous about, they're sensitive and they don't want to suffer criticism and judgment. I'm like, you are not throwing yourself out into the world. You are going out there and you are crafting your own community and your own reality. Mm-hmm. So you ban, you block, you delete, yes. You cultivate. Absolutely. People are lucky if they get to be in your community or in your zone or in your business or a client That's of yours. Right. It's not a right that they have. It's not their right to be in your life, yes. Be a client or whatever it is. It is a privilege, just like it's a privilege for me to be with you or you to be with anyone else. Yes. And so I think Correct. It's building a boldness, which is why having a team, like you said, or a coach who understands being HSP and yes. helping to protect you is what starts to build up your capacity to be in the world, right?
Yeah, and this is the ability, as you quite rightly said, to build boundaries, right? This is something that because we're so osmotic with the rest of the world, it's hard for us to think that we can have actually boundaries in place. Yeah. And we can consciously build boundaries. And I think for doing that, that's where a coach is immensely helpful because they can tune into you and see where do you need to build structures and or a team to create your own bubble, because you can operate in the online world in your own bubble, and there's a ticket that you can pull to get into the bubble, and you can also be scooted out of the bubble if it's not really in resonance for either side, right? So it's really about creating your own kingdom and allowing your rules to work for you first and foremost before they work for anyone else, and getting support, getting people to really help you construct that vision, which is where a coach is helpful, and then to execute that vision where a team is helpful.
There's two things about that. The first is that when you go to, if you're an HSP and you go, for example, specifically you're looking to advance your career, or specifically you're looking to grow your business or start a business and you're an HSP, my recommendation would be don't go to a mainstream coach. Go to
That's correct.
Coach. They will never get you. They will not understand. They will try, but they will not, because they haven't walked in your shoes. Correct. I just feel it's so important to get someone who's walked a path, who understands it. So we'll talk a little bit in a moment about what you do that where you help people like that. The second point, which felt so important just before, is totally gone from my mind.
Well, then we shall move along.
Come back to it. It was something about when you, like, this is like when you're listening to this, if you're HSP, here's what I felt like I needed to say. If you're like, there's so many things that I need to focus on to like wrap around myself, like I need to protect myself and like to counter my sensitivities. But the real message here is this: you've got so many gifts. And the whole point of this conversation is And the whole point of what you do is to take people, right, and to let these gifts flourish in the world. So not only you can be happy, but the world can get this very important skill set, which is so missing on the world stage in leadership, in businesses, in product and service delivery, and everything.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Because with the state of the world, I guess we can all agree some of the things that you talked about are really critical, and being empathetic, compassionate, but really intuitive.
Yes.
Leadership and delivery of.
We're needed now. It's our time to assume leadership and to play a role in shaping our future. And it will take a lot of sensitive people to rise up to really make their mark on the world in the way they're meant to, because I think we're here with a divine mission. We all have our little mosaic to add to the masterpiece, and the only reason that we put this effort into building our bubble and protecting ourselves is not because we need to like operate from Fort Knox. No, it's so that our gifts have more of a chance to shine, that we have more energy, that we're not bogged down by the wrong things, that we don't waste our day because we read a criticism on a video we did. It's about making sure that we maintain great energy hygiene so that we can step up and step out and really share the best we have. And so it just makes sense that we take care of ourselves while we take care of the world.
Indeed. And like when you think about what I think, like collectively, we can probably all agree it would do the world well right now to have more empathetic leaders and more intuitively driven leaders. Like love the analytical mind, love the facts and the evidence, love all of that. I'm all about it. But really, it's half the story, right? There needs to be an increasing amount of intuitive decision making and intuitive leadership.
Yes.
In all sectors and in all areas. So tell me, and everyone listening, what do you do where you help people in HSP? Specifically, you've got your focus area is helping people in HSPs in business, right?
Yes, that has been my focus since 2014. The reason that is my main focus is because I have almost 2 decades of entrepreneurship behind me, and I feel I've really seen all the highs and all the lows that come with such a long business journey, and I feel able to support HSPs not just on the kind of the immaterial realm, things like mindset and energy management and how to thrive as an HSP, but also from the practical side of what works in business, how can you design a business so it's set up to really work and also be financially successful. And so it's for me, it's this blending of the inner and the outer worlds together that I like to share, because I see this is as I spoke earlier about the unique mix of things you can offer. That's my unique mix of being able to gift both my experience, my analytical side, and also my very intuitive claircognizant side, and to merge that together. And I also, and that's a huge part of my work, I also am a lifelong spiritual seeker, and my great passion is consciousness. So for me, it's also blending in consciousness work into how we build businesses, how we run businesses, how we serve, what our mission is. And so really the big picture backdrop for everything I do is to lead people back to love, because this is, I think, the essence of our being and should be the essence of our businesses too. So I have this as the big backdrop to the more practical way it shows up in intuitive business coaching, but really that is my true mission.
What is not to love about all of this? It's so good. And when people, what I love about what your background is that you were like wildly successful in business, and then were like, I'm also HSP. It's like this is a natural progression to, to bring that together, to then say, well, I've been really successful. Let me help other HSPs. in their own businesses. Not that it's not valid and wonderful just to go, I'm going to coach HSPs in business, but the fact you did that for such a long time and just created, you know, so much out of it yourself is really inspiring. So you have got a gift that people can dive into, right?
Yes, I sure do. I sure do.
So I'm going to put a link with this. Can you just tell it? It's called the Sensitive Success Suite. So
yes, it's basically check into your suite of goodies. The first thing is a meditation for you that I recorded, and it's to help you awaken your sensitive power. And that is a meditation that really seems to touch a lot of people's hearts, because it's there to remind you of your magic and remind you of why you're here and of how special you are. So that's the first thing. And the next thing is actually I Reiki charge. I'm also a Reiki master. I Reiki charged screensavers that we designed that have key messages that are important for HSPs, like I'm safe, I'm enough, I am abundant, all of these kind of messages. And so we've designed both desktop and phone screensavers, and I personally charge them with Reiki energy, so you can put them on your computer or phone to have like positive energy, plus really like a mindset message mantra that you can see and kind of ground yourself in. And lastly, I have my resource guide for HSPs, and I also share all of the free content and also some of my courses and all the other things I offer in that resource guide for HSPs. So this is kind of a trilogy of goodies for everyone.
Fantastic for people, specifically HSPs obviously, but specifically for people that may be already in their own business or wanting to start their own business. It's a fantastic resource. Well, thank you very much. This has been super fun.
Well, thank you, Bernadette, for having me. I absolutely am thrilled that we got to spend this time together. You have so much love and light and joy that you share. So thank you for doing the work that you do, and thank you for having me.
You're very welcome.